The sun is a cold, pale eye above the limitless emptiness of the steppe. The wind is sharp, and the air carries the bitter, metallic taste of dust and dried blood. And through this merciless land, a boy is dragged. He is not yet a man, but he is already a prisoner. His hands are lashed behind him. His body sways with every cruel step. His neck is trapped in a heavy, chafing punishment called a kang, a wooden collar designed not just to confine him, but to inflict maximum humiliation and prevent any chance of escape. Every time he moves, the wood rubs his skin raw. This device is a public declaration of his utter powerlessness and a symbol of the great shame visited upon his father's house. His guards are his enemies, the ruthless warriors of the Tai-Chi-Ute tribe. They ride with spears, their faces grim and unreadable. They look at the boy with contempt. They look at him as a trophy, a walking symbol of political defeat. They believe that by displaying him, they have finally killed the memory of his father's line and eliminated a future threat to their own power. His capture is a clear statement to all the surrounding clans. The Borgijin clan is finished. Before he was Genghis Khan, the one man who would command the world's greatest empire, he was just this boy, Temujin. He was enslaved, humiliated, and reduced to a political prize. He is nothing now, but the sheer terror and rage of this moment will be the fuel for the rest of his life. He remembers every promise, every betrayal. He remembers the cold fact that his own lineage meant nothing when survival was at stake. The memory of the Tai-Chi-Ute's cruel laughter will become the foundation of his future justice. This is where we begin. The story of the trauma and choices that forged the universal ruler. We have to start at the low point, in the dust of his shame, to truly understand the absolute price paid to become invincible.
Now let us turn our attention to the vast arena where this boy's fate would be decided. This is the Mongolian Steppe, a world of savage beauty and pitiless politics. It is a place where civilization is not built from stone or fixed laws, but from grass, leather, and blood. It is a land of profound paradox. It demands absolute freedom and movement to follow the herds, yet survival requires rigid obedience to the tribe. This dual nature, the call of individual freedom and the demand for iron discipline, will define Temujin's future armies. Life here is starkly simple. You move, you hunt, you survive. But survival requires the strength of a collective, and the collective requires a leader, a Khan. A Khan is a chieftain. He is one among many. His authority is entirely earned through strength, military success, and proven ability, not given by divine right or long bloodline. The Khan's primary responsibility is economic. He is the man who can successfully navigate the external dangers of the steppe, the unpredictable blizzards, the devastating famines, and the constant threat of rival raiders. The Khan promises a sliver of safety in an endlessly dangerous world, but his authority is constantly tested by his rivals. There was no single ruler of all the Mongols. The land was fractured into dozens of volatile clans, often based on tenuous lineage and the shifting loyalty of strong warriors. These groups, the fierce Tartars, the wealthy Cariate, the cunning Merkit, and the cruel Taichiut, were not a unified nation. They were a volatile web of complex raids, multi-generational grudges, and shifting political friendships. They were perpetually at war over vital grazing rights, control of nascent trade routes, and the manpower found in captured slaves. The pressure to consolidate power was immense, but no one man had yet succeeded. Temujin's father was Yasuge. He was a minor Khan of the Borjigan clan, but he was a powerful, ambitious man who understood the necessary balance between diplomacy and ruthless action. Yasuge had used political strategy to elevate his clan's status. Crucially, he forged a strong alliance with the chief Togrul, Khan of the Cariate, a relationship sealed by a sacred blood oath, an Unda partnership. This alliance, based on deep personal trust and mutual military support, gave the young Borjigan clan a crucial measure of safety and stability in a world where alliances rarely lasted beyond the next season. The strategic marriage arranged for his son was meant to lock this prosperity in place forever.
But in a land of 1,000 Khans, stability was always temporary. It was only as strong as the man who held it. And Yasuge was about to discover that the grudges of the past were far more potent than any new alliance he could forge.
The end came swiftly and cruelly, as it often does on the steppe. Yasuge was riding home, having just arranged Temujin's betrothal to Berta, securing an important marriage alliance with the neighboring Conqueror tribe. This diplomatic success was intended to cement his clan's future prosperity. But tragedy lay on the road. Yasuge stopped to rest and share a meal with a seemingly friendly group of Tartars. They recognized him from past feuds. They welcomed him, offered him drink, but laced his food with a slow-acting poison, never forgetting that Yasuge's clan had wronged them in the past. It was an act of ancient, calculated revenge. Yasuge knew he was dying. He rode for 3 desperate days, pushing his horse relentlessly, his body ravaged by the poison. He made it back to his encampment, where he collapsed before his wife, Holin, and his young son, Temujin. With the Khan's last breath gone, the entire political world of the Mongols flipped instantly. The social contract of the steppe was absolute. Loyalty belongs to the living Khan, not to his ghost, and certainly not to his widow and small sons. This ancient law prioritized bare survival and strength above all sentimental bonds. The chief men of the Borjigan clan, the very people who had sworn loyalty to Yasuge, immediately saw the opportunity to seize power and resources. They looked at Herlin, a woman, and her 7 young children and saw a burden that would consume their precious resources. They determined that supporting this family was too great a risk to their own survival and their own ambitions. They wasted no time. They took the family's most vital assets, the cattle, the horses, and the large felt tents. These items represented wealth, mobility, and warmth, the only true forms of survival in nomadic life. They loaded their own belongings and simply rode away, abandoning their former leader's family to starve. It was the ultimate, cold-blooded lesson in betrayal. Temujin, a boy born to privilege, woke up to find himself an orphan and an outcast. Holin, Temujin's mother, was a formidable woman even in grief. She was a true survivor. She rode after the fleeing tribe, her hair wild, waving her husband's standard and screaming curses. Her voice was lost to the wind, but the men, seeing their future in their own herds and not in the dead Khan's lineage, ignored her. They spurred their horses to a gallop, leaving her alone with her 7 children and the vast, empty, terrifying steppe. Yesterday, they called her the Khan's wife. Today, she was just another widow abandoned on the wind. The collapse was total. The family, once noble, now had nothing. Their lives became a desperate, endless scramble for existence. They ate roots, caught fish, and hunted small animals. Every day was a relentless fight against the cold, against hunger, and against the wolves that circled their meager camp. Holin's defiance became the steel backbone of Temujin's will. She taught her children that they must be united. She instructed them in the ruthless laws of survival that the only bond that mattered was the one they shared. She told them that they must never trust anyone outside their immediate family, and that they must be strong enough to never be abandoned again. But the abandonment and the constant scarcity soon turned the family inward. The existential pressure cooker of the steppe began to turn against itself.
The wilderness was the ultimate teacher. The steppe offered no solace, only pitiless logic. It eliminated weakness to ensure survival. Survival became a zero-sum game. Every piece of food, every scrap of clothing, every usable arrow was a matter of life and death. And it was this desperate scarcity that drove the most profound and ruthless choice of Temujin's young life. His older half-brother, Bektair, was a powerful young man. He was demanding and constantly abused his authority as the eldest, attempting to hoard the precious resources they hunted. Bektair became a direct, immediate threat to Temujin's own survival and his claim to lead the family unit. In a world of scarcity, a challenge to leadership is a death sentence. The conflict centered around a single catch, a small fish or a freshly shot hawk. To Bektair, it was dinner. To Temujin, it was a challenge to the fragile order he was trying to establish. He understood instinctively that allowing Bektair's challenge to stand would invite others to test the family's strength, leading to their total collapse. This was a political problem disguised as a sibling quarrel. Temujin first approached his younger brother, Khasar, and the two decided Bektair had to be removed. This was a cold, necessary political calculation made by starving boys whose lives depended on absolute internal discipline. This act foreshadowed the uncompromising nature of the future Mongol Empire's law code, where personal feelings were always secondary to the stability of the state. Temujin and Khasar found Bektair sitting alone, resting by a stream. They slowly approached him, their hands shaking. They drew their small bows and leveled their arrows. Bektair looked up. He understood immediately what was happening. He did not beg for his life. Instead, he made a final, dignified plea, saying, "You are already family, brothers. Why do this to me? I am just a man. Don't shed my blood." But the plea of kinship held no power against the gnawing reality of hunger and the cold logic of necessity. The arrows struck. Bektair fell, dead, slain by his own brothers. Temujin was immediately shaken. He ran to his mother, sobbing, trying to hide the truth. Hualun did not need to be told. She wept bitterly, but in her silent grief, a flicker of something new appeared, a grim, silent pride in her son's pitiless resolve. She saw the strength that would ensure the rest of her children would survive. It was Temujin's first murder. It was his first taste of absolute power, grim, bitter, but decisively effective. The shame of shedding family blood would forever haunt him, but it established one immutable fact in the cold world of the Mongols. He would not be denied. This act laid the psychological groundwork for the future Mongol Empire's uncompromising ruthlessness. The price of survival was paid in family blood.
The family had secured their safety, but they could not hide forever. The Taichuit tribe, driven by ancient grudges and the desire to wipe out Yasuge's line completely, were relentless hunters. One day, the hunters found the small, desolate camp. They captured Temujin, treating him not as a future leader, but as an animal. He was bound, stripped of his dignity, and secured in the heavy Kang collar, a brutal visual mark of the shame of his family's downfall. He was displayed as a trophy, a warning to all who dared to challenge the established tribes. But the Taichuit made a fundamental mistake. They were arrogant. They believed the boy's will was broken. They had underestimated the fierce, cold resolve born of the Bekter murder. They had failed to see the fire in his eyes. On a dark night, during a drunken feast, the guards grew complacent. Temujin, using the chaotic noise, managed to find a moment when his guard was not looking. With a sudden surge of adrenaline and willpower, he brought his heavy wooden collar down onto the head of the sentry, knocking him unconscious. He fled into the night, the heavy Kang collar still locked around his neck, scrambling through the darkness. His rivals pursued him, confident they would find him easily. The sheer difficulty of running blind across the uneven steppe with a collar around his neck should have been a fatal handicap, yet he pressed on, mile after desperate mile. As he ran, he encountered a servant family, a common family of the tribe. The head of the house, a sympathetic man, was deeply impressed not by his clothes or his lineage, but by the sheer, desperate, unquenchable will to survive in his gaze. At the risk of his own life, the servant family hid the boy, placing him beneath a cartload of fleece. The Taichuit hunters searched the cart, their eyes passing over the hiding spot. They never found him. Once the hunters passed, Temujin continued his flight to the nearby Onan River. He plunged into the frigid black water. He used a bundle of reeds to breathe, hiding underwater as the desperate riders searched the riverbanks. Every moment held the tension of a snapping twig or a cough that could give him away. This escape required not just courage, but remarkable physical endurance and patience, lessons that would serve him years later commanding vast armies. It was the ultimate psychological moment. In the black waters of the Onan, the Khan's defeated son drowned. The cold, ruthless survivor who emerged would never bow again. This escape was his metamorphosis. He had survived capture, defied destiny, and had now earned the loyalty of a man outside his family. His legend began that night. This event would later shape the philosophy of the Mongol army, reinforcing the idea that ingenuity and courage were more valuable than aristocratic birth.
Now a free man, Temujin had nothing but his horse, his scars, and the aura of destiny that clung to him. But he had learned the ultimate lesson of the steppe. Kinship fails, but loyalty is forever. He began to attract men who believed in him, not for his father's gold, but for his character and his proven competence. Borju, a stranger who had helped him recover stolen horses, joined him without question. Jelme, a man who had once been loyal to his enemies, swore eternal loyalty after Temujin showed him courage. These were the first pillars of his empire, men who joined him out of respect, not bloodline. This core group would become the foundation of the Mongol meritocracy that would dominate the steppe and eventually the world. Their initial small band quickly became the nucleus of his Keshig, the future elite guard of the Mongol Empire. He found his wife, Berte, who had been waiting patiently for him. He formally reclaimed her as his bride, and her family, the generous Conqueror, gave her a black sable coat as a dowry. This was Temujin's first true wealth, a tangible symbol of the restoration of his family's honor and status. With these few followers, the growing clan of the Borjigin began to rise again. Temujin was now actively building a political identity, using his charisma to attract talent and his growing reputation for fairness in dividing plunder to maintain their loyalty. Temujin made his first strategic political move. He rode to the powerful chief Togrul, Khan, his father's sworn brother. He gave Togrul the sable coat, his most valuable possession, as a gift, paying back a debt of protection. Togrul accepted the gift, acknowledging the son of his dead friend, and welcomed Temujin, swearing to protect him. This alliance with Togrul, the most powerful Khan in the region, gave Temujin crucial security that would allow his own small group to grow. From outcast to ally, from orphan to Khan, the boy had reclaimed the title through will alone. He had survived the steppe. He had faced betrayal. He thought he'd won peace. He had secured his family and his honor. But peace in the world of the Mongols is always temporary.
The camp was quiet. Temujin and Borte were finally together. The future looked steady, but the seeds of the past always yield a terrible harvest. One cold night, the silent storm broke. The Merkit tribe, old enemies of the Borjigin clan, descended upon the camp in a devastating, unexpected raid. It was not a random attack. It was an act of vengeance across generations. Years before, Yasuge had stolen Hoelun from a Merkit warrior. The Merkit never forgot the humiliation, and they came back to reclaim the debt in the most personal way possible. Temujin and his followers fought fiercely, but they were too few. They were routed. Temujin leapt onto his horse and fled into the darkness, unable to fight the overwhelming force. But the Merkit did not want land or horses. They wanted revenge. They rode straight for Borte, their target the restoration of their own lost honor. When the dust settled, Temujin looked back upon his shattered camp. He had escaped, but his beloved wife was gone, carried away into the night by the ruthless raiders. His world had collapsed again. This crisis was too big for his small band of followers and his handful of meritocratic friends. He could not win this war alone. He had to enter the high-stakes political arena. He had to raise a real army. To find the strength to reclaim his wife, Temujin knew he must forge a massive military alliance with the two most powerful Khans remaining on the steppe, the great chief Togrul and his own powerful rival, Jamuka. The personal trauma of the murder and the escape had hardened his soul. Now, the kidnapping of his wife would trigger the necessary action. The time for mere survival was over. The great wars of unification were about to begin. The Khan had risen. Now the steppe would test what kind of ruler he would be. He would have to seek the alliance of a man he loved, and a man he knew he would one day have to betray. The vast, endless Mongol steppe, silent and waiting, had just given birth to its ultimate conqueror.